Hello sports fans, welcome to Super Sports Central. Today, we're going to be going over my Week 7 college football predictions. So last week I had a record of 11-4, and that brings my record on season to 101-16. Kicking things off with Vanderbilt hosting Georgia. So Georgia's probably coming off their best game of the season where they destroyed Kentucky. Now Vanderbilt is 2-5, they've lost 5 straight, and over the last 3 seasons, Georgia has outscored Vanderbilt by a score of 147-6. Carson Beck and the Georgia's passing offense have been very good this season, as Beck is 4th in the country in passing yards with 1,886. And Georgia now faces a Vanderbilt defense that gives up 34 points per game and 263.7 passing yards per game. So Georgia should dominate this game offensively. Now the Vanderbilt offense is actually decent, but I still think Georgia should easily win this game, and they hand Vanderbilt their 6th consecutive loss this season, and Georgia wins this one by a score of 51-13. Next game, we've got Michigan hosting Indiana. So Indiana has not been very good at all this season. They're 2-3, and they've beaten Akron and Indiana State, which is an FCS team. Indiana's offense is also only averaging 11 points a game against Power 5 opponents. They now have to face Michigan, who has the best scoring defense in the country, allowing just 6.7 points per game. Michigan should dominate this game. Their run game is elite, and the Indiana run defense is not good at all. Michigan should win this game easily. They win by a score of 42-7. Next game, we got Ohio State at Purdue. So Ohio State hasn't been amazing this season, especially offensively. They're averaging 35 points a game, which is still very good, but not elite like we're used to in the previous seasons. The good news is Purdue has the second worst scoring defense in the Big Ten, allowing 28 points per game. So I think Ohio State should be able to find some success offensively. Now the Purdue offense isn't great, so Ohio State should get the win here, but they do need to make sure they don't get caught looking ahead when they play Penn State. But I've got Ohio State getting the win here in a game that I think is going to be a little bit closer than it should be, but Ohio State wins this one by a score of 31-17. Moving on, we've got Florida State hosting Syracuse. So Syracuse is in the middle of a tough 3-game stretch where they play Clemson, North Carolina, and Florida State all in 3 consecutive weeks. Syracuse is a team that looks to run the football and also get quarterback Garrett Schrader involved in the run game. Florida State's run defense is not amazing. They're allowing 144.8 rushing yards per game, and they're also coming off a game where they allowed over 200 rushing yards to Virginia Tech. But I think Florida State is going to be able to slow down the Syracuse rushing attack, and I also think Florida State's going to be able to build an early lead, which will force Syracuse to go away from the run as they try to come back, and Florida State will win this game fairly easily by a score of 38-14. Up next, we got Arkansas at Alabama. So Alabama's coming off a big win over Texas A&M, where quarterback Jalen Milroe threw for a career-high 321 passing yards. So maybe Milroe can build on that as he faces an Arkansas pass defense that is decent. Now, Arkansas has lost 4 straight, but they've been in all 4 of those games and have made those very close games. Arkansas could make this one interesting, but if they're going to make this one interesting, they need to do 2 things. One is have good offensive line play to give KJ Jefferson enough time to throw against a good Alabama pass rush. And 2 is the Arkansas defense is going to need to make some plays, and that's just something I don't trust the Arkansas defense to do, as in their 4 games against Power 5 opponents, the defense is allowing 33 points per game. So I could see Arkansas making this one close, and I think they make it close, but I don't think Arkansas does enough to get the win. Alabama wins this one by a score of 28-23. Up next, we got Utah hosting Cal. So Utah's coming off a bye, and we still don't know if quarterback Cam Rising is playing, because he hasn't played yet this season, as he's coming off a torn ACL he suffered in the Rose Bowl at the end of last season. The good news for Utah is they know if Cam Rising is playing, they just won't tell the public. Now, to me, that sounds like he's playing, but that's just a random guess on my part. But I think Cal could be able to hang around, especially if Cam Rising doesn't play, because they were able to make a close game against Oregon State last week, and Utah and Cal have very similar playing styles in running the football and playing good defense. Now, Utah has the much better defense, and I'm going to take them because of their defense. But if Cam Rising doesn't play, this could be a close game. If Rising plays, Utah wins more easily. If Rising doesn't play, Utah wins 26-21. If Rising does play, Utah 30-24. Next game, we got Penn State hosting UMass. So Penn State's coming off a bye, and now they face UMass before they head to Ohio State next week. So the good news with scheduling UMass this week is there likely isn't going to be a trap game, as UMass is the team that has just won 1 game all season and has a terrible defense, allowing 221 rushing yards per game and nearly 40 points a game. Both those stats are bottom 3 in the country. Penn State should be able to run the ball at will, dominate the line of scrimmage, and Penn State will easily win this game by a score of 45-10. Next game, we got Texas A&M visiting Tennessee. So this is an interesting matchup. Tennessee is one of the best rushing offenses in the country as they run for 231 yards per game. Now, Texas A&M has one of the best rush defenses and defenses overall in the country. Texas A&M allows just 81 rushing yards per game. Now, the pass defense is also pretty good for A&M, even though they were shredded by Alabama through the air last week. Tennessee's defense is also good, as they're allowing just 17.8 points per game. So I think this will be a lower scoring game between two great defenses. This game could come down to Joe Milton and the Tennessee passing offense, which hasn't been overly impressive so far this season, but Tennessee's coming off a bye. They had an extra week to prepare. They're home, and they also have another element of their offense that Texas A&M doesn't have, and that is a quarterback in Joe Milton who has a threat with his legs, and I think Tennessee gets the win because of Joe Milton's legs, and they win this game by a score of 24-16. Up next, we got Oklahoma State hosting Kansas. So both teams are coming off good wins last week. Oklahoma State upset Kansas State, and Kansas ran wild in their win over UCF. Now this game is going to come down to Kansas' ability to run the football, which they have the 6th best rushing offense in the country, as they average 232 rushing yards per game, and they nearly ran for 400 rushing yards last week in the win over UCF. Now Kansas will likely be starting back quarterback Jason Bean for the 3rd straight week, as starting quarterback Jalen Daniels is dealing with a back injury. Now I think Kansas will be able to run the football against the Oklahoma State run defense that hasn't been amazing, allowing 154 rushing yards per game, and Kansas picks up another big win, and they become bowl eligible with their 6th win of the season, and Kansas wins this one by a score of 33-24. Up next, we got Washington hosting Oregon. So this is a really tough game to predict. This is going to be a great game. This might be game of the year. But we have two elite teams, two insane offenses. In fact, these are the 2nd and 3rd best scoring offenses in the country, and both teams also have amazing quarterbacks. Then you look at the defenses. Oregon has the better defense, but I don't think there's going to be much defense in this game with how good these two offenses are. But if Oregon can find a way to stop Michael Penix Jr. and the Washington pass offense, I like their chances. And now Oregon has the 5th best passing defense in the country, allowing just 153 passing yards per game. But I think there's just way too many playmakers on the outside of this Washington offense, as their top 3 receivers, Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan, and Jalen Polk, all average more than 15 yards per catch. And if Washington is able to stop the pass, then this Washington team, while they don't do it much, they have the ability to run the football. Then you move to Oregon offensively. They've got Bo Nix and star wide receiver Troy Franklin, who has 535 receiving yards and 7 receiving touchdowns so far this season. And then you've also got to deal with an elite Oregon run game, which has 3 insanely good backs, Bucky Irving, Jordan James, and Noah Whittington. But the absurd thing about this run game is Oregon as a team averages 7.1 yards per carry this season. So this game is a true coin flip for me. Both teams are coming with a bye, so they're going to be well rested. This may come down to who has the ball last. But I'm going to take Washington getting the win by a score of 45-42, because I don't think there's a team that could truly stop Michael Penix Jr. and this Washington offense. I think they have the best offense in the country. But if there is a team that can slow down the Huskies' offense, it is Oregon. But as I said, this is a game that could truly go either way. It is a true coin flip for me. It maybe comes down to who has the ball last. But I've got Washington in a Game of the Year contender, and they win this game by a score of 45-42. Up next, we got Pitt hosting Louisville. So this could be a letdown game for Louisville after a big win over Notre Dame last week. They now have to go on the road and face a Pitt team that is not good at just 1-4, but this still could be a game that is closer than expected. Louisville is the better team here, and I think that will lead them to the win, but this is a game that will be a lot closer than it should be and expected. Louisville wins this one by a score of just 28-20. Up next, we got Arizona visiting Washington State. So Arizona has played 2 great teams very closely over their last 2 games. They lost to Washington by only a touchdown, and then they took USC to triple overtime last week. Now, Arizona's played both those games with their backup quarterback Noah Fifita, who has been replacing the injured Jaden DeWara, who has a game-time decision this week with an ankle injury. But Fifita has done a great job for Arizona at quarterback, and if he plays this week for Arizona, he can definitely lead them to an upset win over Washington State. But this is going to be a high-scoring game. Both offenses want to throw the football. Washington State just got the better offense, the better passing attack, and they're going to get the win and bounce back from their loss to UCLA last week. They win this game by a score of 38-28. Moving on, we've got LSU hosting Auburn. This is another game that could be interesting, because Auburn took Georgia down to the wire 2 weeks ago. They were on a bye last week, and they've got some extra time to prepare. But I think Auburn will be able to score against a terrible LSU defense. But will they be able to keep up with Jaden Daniels and an elite LSU offense is the question. The answer for me is no. I think LSU will eventually just simply outscore Auburn, because we all know LSU's defense does not exist. But LSU win this game by a score of 42-31 in a shootout, just because I think their offense is just going to be way too much for Auburn to handle. Moving on, we've got Miami visiting North Carolina. So Miami's coming off a brutal last-second loss to Georgia Tech, and they now have to try to bounce back from that awful loss and also play a good North Carolina team at the same time. Miami's defense and run game is going to be the key for this game. If Miami can slow down Drake May and run the football, I like their chances. Now, Miami's defense has been great to start the season, and they have the best rushing offense in the ACC, rushing for 211 yards per game. Now, I just don't think Miami is going to be able to completely shut down Drake May, plus go on the road after a brutal loss, and I don't think Miami is going to be able to get the win against North Carolina, and I've got North Carolina narrowly getting the win by a score of 31-28. This is another game that could truly go either way. Moving on, we've got Kentucky hosting Missouri. Before we start my prediction for this game, I've got a serious problem with how the AP poll ranked these two teams following last week, because both these teams lost. They dropped their first game of the season, but the AP poll only dropped Kentucky 4 spots after getting absolutely annihilated by Georgia. And then they knocked Missouri down 5 spots after playing a close game against LSU. But that's besides the point right now. We're going to find out who's actually the better team this week as they face off head-to-head. But as I said, both teams are coming off their first loss of the season. For me, this game comes down to defense. Can Missouri stop Ray Davis and the Kentucky rushing offense? And can the Kentucky defense stop Brady Cook, Luther Burden, and the Missouri passing offense? For me, I think both teams will have a good amount of offensive success. And I'm going to take Missouri in what is technically going to be an upset, but this is a game that could truly go either way. Really, no team has been able to stop Brady Cook and Luther Burden so far. So I think they're going to have a big game once again. And Missouri escapes Kentucky narrowly with the 33-31 win. That's another game that is a true coin flip. Next game, we got USC visiting Notre Dame. This is another game that could truly go either way. This might sound crazy, but I've actually gone back and forth on this game more than I actually have for Washington against Oregon. But Notre Dame needs a win in a big way. They also need to get their offense back on track, as in their last 3 games, Notre Dame is just scoring 18 points a game. Now, if there's one thing that can get this Notre Dame offense back on track, that is a terrible USC defense, which is allowing 27 points a game and 421 yards of offense per game. Now, USC's offense, which is the highest scoring offense per game, faces a tough task as they face a great Notre Dame defense, especially pass defense, as Notre Dame is the 3rd best pass defense in the country, allowing just 132 yards per game through the air. This is another game that is a true coin flip for me. USC has not won a game in South Bend since 2011. I think Notre Dame is able to run the football extremely effectively against a poor USC defense. Notre Dame's offense gets clicking once again, and they get the win in a back-and-forth battle, 35-31. Another game that could truly go either way. Up next, we got Oregon State hosting UCLA. This is another game that is extremely tough to predict. These two teams have very similar playing styles. Offensively, they want to run the football. Defensively, they play insanely good defense. I don't think either team will have a ton of success offensively, especially on the ground, which is what they want to do. So I think this could come down to quarterback play. For UCLA, they've got a true freshman quarterback in Dante Moore, who's been okay so far this season, but they've relied heavily on the run. And then Oregon State has DJ Uyunglele, and if DJ can play a good game, I think Oregon State gets the win. But this is another game that is a true coin flip for me. I've got Oregon State with the win because they got the better quarterback, a very good defense, even though both defenses are very good, and they're home. But this is a true coin flip for me, and I've got Oregon State 21-20 in a defensive battle. And our final game, it is NC State visiting Duke. So Duke might be without starting quarterback Riley Leonard, who suffered a brutal high ankle sprain in the loss to Notre Dame 2 weeks ago. We don't know if he plays, but I'm going to predict this game as if Leonard doesn't play. But this is going to be a defensive battle. Duke has the better defense, and I also think they're going to be able to run the football, even against a tough NC State defensive front. I think Duke has to win here by a score of 24-20, and that is if Riley Leonard does not play. If Leonard plays, it will be something more of like the 34-20 range, 31-20 range. Still in favor of Duke. But those are my Week 7 college football predictions. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, turn on notifications so much editor videos. I do my best to post as often as possible. Make sure to check out the community tab on my channel, where you can vote on who you think will win some of this week's big games. But thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, turn on notifications. I do my best to post as often as possible, and I will see you in the next video.